212 members of Congress have just put their names on a formal impeachment resolution targeting Donald Trump. And listen, this isn't a performative stunt. This isn't some harmless political headline designed to trend for 24 hours and disappear. This is the third impeachment push in 6 years. But insiders are saying this one feels different because this time sources connected to the House Judiciary Committee claim they're sitting on what they describe as documentation so strong, so direct, so impossible to spin that it's already shaking the foundation of Washington. Think about that for a second. When nearly half of the entire U.S. House of Representatives signs an impeachment resolution in less than 72 hours, that's not a debate. That's a detonation, and you need to buckle up because what triggered this move is being described as one of the most explosive developments since the Watergate era. So before we break down what's unfolding, hit that subscribe button right now because you do not want to miss what comes next. Now, here's what reportedly lit the fuse. A classified intelligence briefing held on January 15th allegedly revealed evidence that the administration coordinated with foreign financial interests in a way that may have interfered with ongoing federal investigations. According to reports tied to multiple congressional committees, documents show what appear to be direct communications between White House-linked officials and overseas banking entities during moments when the Department of Justice was involved in sensitive proceedings. And no, this isn't being framed as politics as usual. Constitutional scholars are warning this could represent a breach of the president's oath of office on a level we simply do not see often in modern America. Because if a sitting president is accused of using power to shape enforcement decisions while foreign financial players are involved, that's not just scandal, that's a crisis. And here's the part that should make everyone's stomach drop. This isn't only Democrats pushing this forward. When Republican leadership figures, people who have defended Trump through years of chaos, start stepping out of line and putting their name on an impeachment resolution, that's when you know something has shifted, something massive. So let's walk through what's been building behind the scenes. For months, tension between the White House and Congress has been boiling over. Executive actions that lawmakers say bypass legislative authority, bitter clashes over appointments, and growing alarm over foreign financial connections that investigators reportedly began flagging as far back as September. But everything reached a breaking point on January 12th. That's the day a whistleblower from the Treasury Department reportedly handed House investigators a package so large, so detailed, it stunned people who have spent their entire careers inside Washington. We're talking about 847 pages of transaction records and internal communications. And according to multiple sources who say they reviewed the documents inside a secured congressional facility, the records allegedly show a pattern that's almost impossible to ignore, a pattern where certain financial movements appear to line up with major shifts in federal enforcement decisions. In other words, enforcement actions were allegedly paused at key moments while investigations involving certain entities were put on hold. And those same entities, according to the claim, had moved substantial payments into accounts connected to individuals tied to administration allies. The timing didn't look random. The pattern didn't look accidental. And lawmakers who reviewed it reportedly understood the implication instantly, because if those holds were placed deliberately, then this isn't about politics anymore. This is about power and accountability. Honestly, it's hard to believe we're watching members of both parties move in the same direction against a sitting president in a way we haven't seen in decades. If this is making sense so far, smash the like button because what comes next is where this story turns into something far darker. On January 14th, the House Judiciary Committee reportedly held an emergency closed-door session inside a secure facility beneath the Capitol complex. This wasn't a normal meeting. This wasn't routine. This was the kind of session where phones stay outside. Security is tightened and every word spoken carries consequences. Members walked in expecting a standard briefing, but what they got instead, according to people familiar with the room, was testimony and documentation that left even veteran lawmakers visibly rattled. And one moment in particular changed everything. Representative Gerald Whitmore, a Republican chairman from Ohio, someone who has defended Trump through controversy after controversy, a man who once stood on the House floor and dismissed impeachment as nothing but partisan warfare, walked out of that meeting looking like someone had just watched the world shift under his feet. Witnesses say his hands were shaking. He didn't stop for cameras. He didn't answer reporters. He went straight to his office and shut the door. And then by later that night, his name appeared on the impeachment resolution. Let that sink in. When a committee chairman from the president's own party signs an impeachment document, that's not pressure. That's not strategy. That's evidence reaching a point where loyalty can't protect you anymore. Now, here's where it gets truly chilling. The biggest moment reportedly came during testimony from Deputy Treasury Secretary Margaret Collins. According to multiple representatives who were inside the room, she was questioned directly about the transaction records and the enforcement holds. And what she said immediately triggered calls for tighter security protocols because Collins allegedly confirmed that career financial analysts had flagged the patterns months earlier, back in October. But instead of those findings being documented and escalated, they were allegedly buried, shelled, frozen. The analysts were reportedly instructed to stand down. The reports were locked away and the investigations were stopped in their tracks. Then came the question everyone in that room was waiting for. Who gave the order? Collins reportedly paused, not for 1 second, not for 2, for 11 seconds. 11 seconds of silence in a room where every breath matters. And then she said 4 words that sent shockwaves through the committee. I cannot answer that. At that point, Representative Diana Thornton, Democrat from California and ranking member on the Oversight Committee, reportedly snapped back immediately. Her voice, according to those present, cut through the tension like a blade. You are under oath, Deputy Secretary, she said. Are you invoking executive privilege to avoid answering this committee's questions? The room reportedly froze. Deputy Treasury Secretary Margaret Collins slowly shook her head. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. No, she said, I'm telling you that answering that question would require me to discuss classified communications with serious national security implications. I've been advised by counsel that continuing would risk exposing sensitive sources and methods. That's when Chairman Gerald Whitmore leaned forward. This wasn't the voice of a partisan warrior. According to people inside the room, it was the voice of a man realizing something far bigger was unraveling. Deputy Secretary Collins, he said quietly, I need you to understand the magnitude of what you're telling this committee. Then he asked the question that reportedly drained the color from the room. Are you saying that the obstruction of a federal investigation has been designated a national security matter? Are you telling us that someone inside this administration decided potential criminal activity should be shielded by the same classification rules meant to protect American intelligence operations? Collins didn't look away. I am telling you, she said, that I have been instructed not to answer questions regarding the chain of command behind those financial holds. I am telling you that classification decisions were made well above my authority. And I am telling you that I am deeply uncomfortable with the position I've been placed in. Silence. Absolute silence. According to audio later obtained from a lawmaker's phone, 8 full seconds passed without a single word spoken in that room. Then Whitmore broke it. His voice reportedly cracked as he addressed the committee. This is bigger than Watergate, he said. This is obstruction wrapped in the flag of national security. Those words would leak within the hour. Drop a comment if you felt that moment coming, because everything changed right there. Now, let's rewind for a second. Think about what actually brought Richard Nixon down. It wasn't the break-in, it was the cover-up. It was the systematic effort to obstruct justice, to manipulate power, and to hide wrongdoing from Congress and the American people. The infamous Saturday Night Massacre happened because Nixon fired the special prosecutor investigating him, trying to shut the entire probe down. Eventually, Republican senators went to the White House and delivered the message Nixon could no longer escape. The votes were gone. Party loyalty could no longer protect him. And that parallel today is chilling because this isn't about policy disputes. This isn't about controversial speeches or inflammatory tweets. This is about alleged interference with federal law enforcement to protect financial interests. This is about using national security classification as a shield to block congressional oversight. And according to those who've reviewed the evidence, this didn't come from political operatives or opposition researchers. It came from career Treasury officials, professionals who flagged irregular patterns months ago, when we're reportedly told to stand down. When you zoom out, a pattern emerges across all three impeachments. In 2019, the first impeachment focused on alleged abuse of power involving Ukraine and military aid. The Senate acquitted along strict party lines. In 2021, the second impeachment addressed the events of January 6th. This time, 7 Republicans voted to convict, including Mitt Romney, Bill Cassidy, and Richard Burr. But it still fell short. Now in 2025, this is fundamentally different. This time there are documents. This time there are financial records that don't rely on interpretation or political spin. This time there is sworn testimony from career officials describing a coordinated effort to obstruct federal proceedings. And this time, 47 Republicans signed on to impeachment within hours of reviewing the material. The message is unmistakable. When presidents cross lines that threaten the constitutional order, even their own party eventually reaches a breaking point. Political loyalty cannot survive documented evidence, and you're not going to want to look away now because the most explosive part of this story is still ahead. Legal and political analysts are now openly calling this a constitutional crisis unfolding in real time. This isn't about opinions anymore. This isn't about who you voted for. This isn't about he said, she said. This is about bank records with timestamps. This is about internal messages with dates, names, and signatures. This is about career officials testifying under oath, people who gain nothing by stepping forward and risk everything by doing it. At this point, the question is brutally simple. Either the evidence exists or it doesn't. And according to everyone who has actually seen it inside those secured rooms, they're saying the same thing. It exists. Even conservative legal voices, people who usually defend executive power, are now sounding the alarm. Andrew McCarthy, the former federal prosecutor and longtime National Review contributor, wrote Friday morning that these allegations strike at the very heart of what impeachment was built for. He argued that if a president uses the machinery of government to shield personal financial dealings from federal scrutiny, that is exactly the kind of abuse the founders feared when they wrote impeachment into the Constitution. They had seen monarchs exploit power for personal gain, so they designed a system to stop it. But that system only works if Congress is willing to use it. Now let's translate what this means in real-world terms, because the consequences are already hitting like a wrecking ball. First, the political damage is instant. The resolution has 212 signatures, including 47 Republicans. 47 members of the president's own party have now publicly declared that impeachment proceedings should move forward. And before last week, the accepted belief in Washington was that Republican loyalty would never crack. The base was too loyal. The primary threats were too dangerous. The political cost was too high. That calculation has now collapsed. Second, the financial fallout is massive. Markets didn't shrug this off. They reacted. Stocks dropped sharply Friday as the news spread internationally and global observers started asking the question no American wants to hear: is the U.S. government stable right now? And according to a Reuters poll conducted Saturday, support for at least holding impeachment hearings has surged, jumping dramatically in just 2 weeks. That kind of swing doesn't happen unless something has shifted deep in the public's gut. Third, the institutional damage is already happening. Career officials across Treasury, Justice, and State are reportedly going into full self-preservation mode. They're documenting everything, building paper trails, saving emails, printing records, consulting personal attorneys, because when the system senses a storm is coming, everyone starts preparing for subpoenas, everyone starts preparing for testimony. And if you're getting value from this breakdown, slam that like button because it genuinely helps push this video to more people. Now here's the trap the White House is stuck in. On one side, they're under pressure to keep the base energized no matter what. That means defending the president at all costs, calling leaks illegal, attacking whistleblowers, framing everything as a deep state plot that's been running since day one. But on the other side, they're facing documentation that, according to their own Republican committee chairman, looks like obstruction on a scale America hasn't dealt with since Nixon. So far, the defense has been exactly what you'd expect. Trump went to Truth Social, calling the resolution a witch hunt driven by radical Democrats and weak Republicans who betrayed their voters. He claimed the financial records were fabricated by deep state operatives trying to sabotage his presidency. And he didn't just generalize, he reportedly singled out all 47 Republicans who signed on, labeling them traitors and threatening political retaliation. But here's the problem, a problem so big there's no spin strong enough to cover it. The evidence isn't coming from Democrats. The whistleblower is reportedly a career Treasury official with over 2 decades of service, someone who served under presidents from both parties. That's not a political activist, that's a government professional. The transaction records aren't memes or rumors. They're bank documents tied to major financial institutions. And the testimony that triggered this entire explosion came from a deputy secretary appointed by this very administration. When your defense requires you to attack the credibility of your own officials, you're not defending the truth anymore. You're trying to survive the optics. And legal experts immediately pointed out the contradictions. If the documents are fake, why did the deputy secretary refuse to answer questions about the chain of command, citing national security? If there's nothing to hide, why classify the decision-making process? If this is all a hoax, why are 47 Republicans, many of whom defended you through everything, suddenly breaking ranks? Some former prosecutors are even saying the defensive posture itself looks like consciousness of guilt. So stay with me, because what comes next changes the entire meaning of this story. This isn't just about one president. This isn't just about one controversy. This is about whether the constitutional system still functions when it's tested by someone willing to push every boundary until it breaks. Because if a president can obstruct federal investigations by simply stamping the obstruction national security, then executive accountability becomes an illusion. There are no limits. If the president alone decides what can be investigated and what must be hidden from Congress. Appearing on CNN Sunday, former Attorney General Eric Holder didn't mince words. He said, "This isn't about partisan politics. I've disagreed with this administration on policy issues, but that's not what this moment is about. This is about whether America remains a country where the law applies to everyone, including the president. If these allegations are proven and nothing happens, we've essentially created a monarchy. The founders built this system specifically to prevent one person from placing themselves above the law. And that's the terrifying question sitting underneath all of this. Are we still a nation where power has limits, or are we watching those limits collapse in real time?" Then came another statement that hit like a warning siren. Senator Mitt Romney, one of the few Republicans who previously voted to convict, and someone who has consistently framed politics through constitutional duty, released a message Sunday afternoon that captured the weight of what's unfolding. Romney wrote that he had reviewed classified material available to senators and that every American who values the constitutional republic should be deeply alarmed by what it reveals. He emphasized something that's easy to say but rare to live by in Washington. Follow the facts wherever they lead, no matter the political cost. Because the oath isn't to a person, it's to the Constitution. And behind closed doors, this is reportedly triggering full-blown panic inside Republican leadership. According to multiple reports, Senate leaders spent the weekend in emergency calls trying to figure out what their unified response should even look like. One camp wants to circle the wagons, attack the process, attack the leak, and claim the real crime is the investigation itself. The other camp believes the evidence is too dangerous to dismiss and that defending the indefensible could destroy the party for a generation. So right now, the Republican Party isn't just debating strategy, it's fracturing in real time, pulled apart between loyalty to a leader and loyalty to the Constitution they swore to uphold. Meanwhile, Trump's most loyal supporters are furious at the Republicans who signed on to the E resolution. Social media is flooded with calls to primary them. They're being branded traitors, sellouts, deep state collaborators. To the base, this isn't politics, this is betrayal. But here's the key difference this time, the detail that changes everything. This isn't just Democrats and a few familiar Republican rebels calling for accountability. This includes committee leadership. This includes figures who defended Trump through every prior storm. When those people break, the math changes for everyone still sitting on the fence. If this is blowing your mind, hit that like button right now, because here's where things stand. 212 elected officials have just put their careers on the line by saying a sitting president should face impeachment proceedings. 47 of them are Republicans, and the evidence driving this includes financial records, whistleblower testimony, and a deputy secretary who refused to answer key questions under oath, citing instructions from above. This is no longer political theater. This is about whether obstruction of justice can be hidden behind the words national security. This is about whether any president can place himself above the law and dare Congress to stop him when committee leaders from the president's own party openly break ranks over documented evidence. We've entered territory the modern United States has almost never seen. Now, watch the next few days closely, because the House Judiciary Committee is expected to hold its first public hearing on January 22nd. Multiple administration officials have reportedly been subpoenaed, including individuals tied to the classification decisions, and the Treasury Inspector General's findings on these transaction patterns could arrive before the end of the month. But don't expect this to move quietly. Legal teams are already preparing to fight subpoenas in court. The White House is reportedly considering sweeping executive privilege claims to block testimony. And across America, families are watching to see one thing: will elected officials choose constitutional accountability or political survival? Before we go any further, smash that subscribe button so you never miss coverage like this, because right now the impeachment resolution has been formally introduced. The signatures are in, the evidence is being assembled, and for the first time in American history, we could be staring at an impeachment process where members of the president's own party provide the votes needed to push articles of impeachment forward. This isn't just another headline that disappears in a week. This is a constitutional crisis unfolding in real time. And what happens next may decide whether the presidency still has any meaningful limits at all. The documents exist, the resolution is signed. Now we find out whether accountability still has weight in Washington. The stakes have never felt higher, the evidence has never looked more concrete, and the moment has never been more immediate. Pause for a second and hit that like button if you're finding value in this coverage.